stuck in a holding pattern, like all your dreams and desires are just out of reach. It's almost like the universe is within you and it's just waiting to burst out, but you can't quite seem to find the code to be able to crack it and release it. And let's get into talking about unlocking your potential and how to best use the 6 ASCENT principles to do that. So let's get right into this. This is the ASCENT framework. So this is what essential principles are based on when we talk about self-excellence. When you think about potential, because we hear that a lot, right? And we hear the term of why is it that we have potential and untapped potential, and you hear all these various terms. My thing is, why is it that we can't push a button and have these things actualize and happen? Where's the disconnect? What's broken? What can we do to start to identify or self-identify those areas so we can begin to move ourselves forward? And that's really, I think, the key piece, because I'm a believer in first things first, from the standpoint of, I don't think you can move forward until you maybe understand better what's actually holding you where you are or holding you back. And that could be things in your current world. It could be things going as far back as your childhood. But finding those things out, dealing with those things, getting on equal terms with them, gives you the launch pad, I think, to move forward.
It's interesting. I was driving back yesterday, and I was listening to Thomas Sowell, who, I don't know if you guys have ever heard him or read him and his work. He's like 93 years old. He's like this revered African-American historian, and just an amazing individual, who one of my good friends and coach, who I really want you folks to meet, Jerry, kind of recommended. And he was talking about, how history plays, and where I'm going with this and why this is relevant is that, to really understand, where you've come from, where you've been, is so important to ensure you don't continue to repeat the cycle again. And so he said something in a way I'm like, wow, I never really thought of it that way. The importance of learning about your past, to ensure that you can achieve your future goals, especially when those goals are, beliefs, cultures, habits, things that will continue to repeat itself throughout your history, your future. And so what I believe is that, we're all hopefully on this path of excellence. We're all hopefully moving towards this path of transformation. And it's really tough. And unless we are introduced, given, supported, believed in, mentored, built up this foundation of really good habits and principles, it's really tough to do this. And we see this especially in, storytelling around the haves and have-nots. It's when you think about, what is success? How do you define success first and foremost? Well, that could be based off of monetary success or other success or whatnot. For me personally, it's my ability to not have want. And it doesn't necessarily translate to like, dollar figures, etc. It's like, no, I want the ability to be able to just do whatever I want, like travel and whatnot. It's not like I need to be making $1 million a year kind of thing, because I don't believe that just purely financial salary success equates to happiness.
Yeah, 100% agree with you on that. And I think the important piece of that too is really understanding historically what you're made of. And a lot of that has to do with historically, culturally within your family, your personal journey and different experiences that you've gone through. We are this complete vessel, as we've talked about before, of all of those different things. But we spend so much time, I think, trying to just push forward. We don't spend enough time, I think, kind of looking back to see, as you said, Vince, so that we don't make the same mistake over and over or get in these recycled patterns. And that's why we're not making any progress, is because we're literally getting to a point and then regressing and coming back to that same point.
Well, one of the things that I discovered recently, or shouldn't say recently, what I discovered here, especially in this last, obviously we just started a new calendar year. Um, I, for all, intensive purposes, have been on vacation over the course of last year. And I don't mean the vacation where I was out traveling, having a good time. I took a kind of a vacation from all the trauma that had kind of found me over the last starting, believe me, as far as back as COVID, and now transcending into, this time period of, 2022 to 2023. Those are two really, 2022 and 2021 were 2021 kind of started out bad, and it just kind of snowballed into 2022. Obviously, you guys know me because you know some of the things that I've been through, the car accident, the tumors in my eye, things of that nature, just the health issues that I've experienced, the professional loss, which I don't talk about a lot, but it is a key component because, I'm identified for the Chris the person, but I'm also identified as Chris the professional. And I kind of lost all of that, and I've been in a mindset of trying to regain my footing. Let's use that terminology. There was a time last year when I was starting to wonder if I was broken, and if I had a chance to be able to come back to even some semblance of myself, my previous self. Well, what I determined was I actually have the ability to be more than I was before. How do I get there? And that has been my challenge, at least from the standpoint of the last 3 months. We won't talk about any of the time before that because I just literally took my foot off the gas. It's funny how with us, you come up with these topics, right? And they always seem to be the right topic at the right time for me. I'm learning that about you. And I actually want to tip my cap to you, Mr. Murray, for being that timely vessel or vehicle that brings these thought processes to my, right to my door. And it creating these opportunities for growth and what's the phrase I want to use? Let's just stay with the growth. Using these opportunities to grow, because growth can obviously be a lot of different things. This is right on time for me. I mean, it's just right on time. What's going on? I mean, it couldn't be more perfect. And with that being said, I'm excited. And I think that's what we look for in life, is have reasons to be excited, no matter what it is. Excitement is excitement. If it feeds your brain, if it feeds your emotions, your positive emotions, and the thing, your aspirations. And hopefully there's someone out there who's listening to us that's going to feel the same way.
So Chris, let me ask an additional question. So one of the things you said is, you were going through the process and you're trying to figure out, could you get back to your old self? But in that, you discovered that you can actually be better than, right? That you see that. So in essence, when you boil that down, that's potential. You see the potential of more than,
Exactly.
your previous self. So can you help define what brought you to say that I can get there, or what my potential is, or why I see that it's greater than it used to be?
For me, it starts out with just being able to, you should have an idea where you'd like to go. You may not 100% know where you want to be, but you have a direction. We all have a direction. And it's like, I'm not some fresh-faced kid out of high school or college. I'm a practicing grown-ass man who's been out here doing a lot of things for a lot of decades. I'm starting to round into some purpose. I think Vinny mentioned it earlier, the idea of want versus need. I want to travel. There's some things I've discovered that I want to do that are, let me back up for a second. I think what it is as we grow and mature through life, our desires and our priorities change and shift from time to time. And I think I'm heavily into that moment right now where my priorities are shifting, my wants are shifting. My needs are kind of the same. They've fairly, those needs have kind of been established for a while. I want a roof over my head. I want, a decent amount of money in my bank account. There's certain activities that I do on a day in a day out basis. Those are kind of established. Those are some of those habits we talk about. But now, with that being said, I have really cut out a lot of the filler and a lot of the fat in the process, so to speak. And now I'm at a point where I've targeted 2 to 4 areas that I want. Now, how do I get to those wants? And here's where the process really starts. And it's really more of a mental process than anything. But I am deciding what I want. And here's the other part of it. It's push. We have so many people that come into our lives in and out of our lives on a day in and day out basis. With those people, they all have wants and needs too. How do their wants and needs interact with your wants and needs, and being able to actually, push certain pieces, maybe, I don't mean away from you, but necessarily away from you, but let's just say at arm's length. So just trying to find some clarity in this, because there's a lot of information that gets shared on a day in and day out basis, a lot of data that's floating back and forth, across your eyes, and being able to, settle in, get a little clarity on what it is that's important to you. And I think that's the key right there, is figuring out what's important to you. And that allows you to start to really move forward in your life process.
Clarity is an important piece of it. And Vince, I got a question for you, kind of not so much related to clarity, because I do want to come back and talk a little bit more about that, but really talking about potential. And the question I have, Vince, is how do you define from your chair potential? What is potential? What should, if someone, because they hear this term, you have so much potential, and you go, well, what does that mean? How would you answer that question for someone?
I guess there's multiple ways of looking at this. The one that I would say goes to your point of when you see someone or you hear someone say to you, you have so much potential. It makes me think of, or it makes me feel like, the common phrase is the world is your oyster. And, the potential is you have a lot of really great qualities or building blocks or whatever that is. And this individual could do anything with that. Now, this individual could be successful, fulfill their dreams, their aspirations, etc. And I guess, comes to it, every person has a lot of potential. I guess the question is, do they, one, recognize their potential? Do they have the mindset of realizing they have potential? And then do they have the mindset or belief that they can achieve that potential? And then I guess the third one, if there was a third, would be do they have the wherewithal to actually follow through and persevere to achieve that potential?
That's, I think, where the challenge comes in. That's why I really wanted to start there and talk about the first part of the whole ascent cycle with the aspirations, is really identifying a couple of things. One is what it is you, as you said, wants versus needs is one piece of that. So, and then what do you aspire to be, have, do, become? All of those different pieces are wrapped up in that. Then you also look at that and say, okay, now that I have that, let's get some, and as Chris mentioned a moment ago, where is the clarity of that, right? So now, let's get that clarified. And then the word I want to touch on, because obviously, as I said, there is 2 ways to, I think, go about this. There is the reflective path, which is really what the focus of Ascent is about, where we start looking backwards first before we try to move forward. And then there's directive. Directive is where you say, okay, here, you're here, go there, right? And in that, you really haven't taken the time to understand where you've been or why you are where you are. And I think for me, that's a foundational piece of it. So not to say that there aren't some directive pieces within the ascent process, but the first phases and stages of it are really about looking backwards versus trying to press forward. I bring that up because I think one of the key things that we want to look at when we're talking about this is, just as Vince, I think, summarized beautifully, is what's your mindset? How committed are you to doing these different things, right? And all of it really revolves back to, and it even ties back to what Chris was saying, self-actualization, right? No one can do it for you. The universe, the world, your mom, your dad, your friends, your social circle, all of the accountability parts of identifying these things, formulating some type of action plan, committing to getting that done. And again, it's just taking us around that circle, is on you to hold yourself accountable and to put it together and to move forward. So I think that's the most important piece, is understanding from a clarity standpoint. Step one of one is that piece. Now that we're clear on where we want, what we need, what we don't need, yada, yada, we can move forward from there.
So I've got a question back to you, Brian.
Sure.
How much of all of what you just said comes back to the ability for one to accept failure?
So I'm going to answer that in this way. Yes, failure is a huge piece of it, but accepting or identifying failure, I think, are two different things, right? And what I think a lot of the times what people do is they identify things that have happened in their lives as a failure when maybe it's not, quote unquote, a failure, right? So so they give it too much weight, right? Because that is the thing of life. You have experiences. That is what those experiences are there to do, is to teach you, to learn you, to groom and grow you as you move your way forward through life. So it's not a failure. It's more of a lesson. So start to be able to really look at the things that I have failed at, right? Versus the things that, you know what, I tried that, it didn't work. I won't call it a failure, but here's what I learned from it. So that would be more of the piece I would advise someone to really start to, when they go back and start talking about where I failed, is even if you want to call it a failure, what did you learn from that failure? Because that's the piece that I think is more important than carrying that weight around of I failed. But that's my 3.5 cents. So
I like that.
I'd like to respond to that.
Sure.
So for me, words are powerful. I think we can all agree upon that. The words are very powerful tools, and they can work for you and they can work against you. I would like to substitute the word failure for setback / lesson.
Mm-hmm.
That's the approach that I'm taking right now. I mean, this is a transitional. This, like I said, these last 3 months have started to become a transitional thing for me. And like I said, I don't want to talk about myself. I don't want to reference myself in the respect of I failed. I don't want to say that, because I think that's heavy pressure on because then you start to think like that. And for me, that's dangerous. I'll be honest with you. So this is the part where you give yourself grace. Grace is I had a setback. Usually when someone says I had a setback, it immediately connotes that there's a next chapter. There's a new level to reach. So that's how I choose to view that and frame it. I think, now I can't speak for everybody, but that works really well for me. And I'm starting to see that, as I start to formulate moving forward in this new calendar year. How do I want to reference myself? How do I want to reference my activities? How do I want to reference my movements in this journey? So, like I said, for me, it's a setback. I'm in a reform, it's kind of off topic somewhat. I'm in a reformation of habits right now. And it was, if I can expound on this a little bit, I had an epiphany of sorts yesterday. I was at the gym. So my little routines, I come in, I stretch, do my weight work, then I hit my cardio, and I usually watch some kind of inspirational video or some educational video while I'm doing my cardio. And I got sent the video yesterday or the day before about learning. Now I'm in a learning stage again, or a relearning stage right now. So I'm trying to soak up as much knowledge on my professional side. Well, it bleeds into your personal life too. And I saw this learning, and one of the things the guy said, I think his name was Tim Kim or Tom Kim. I can't. He's a coder, so he wants to. His thing is coding. He's moved into the tech space. This is a guy that had no tech experience before, and what he said he realized in his journey was he needed to form habits, or in our case, reform habits. And he said, you know what? Habits take about a month. He said, if you do something over and over, form a schedule, it takes you about a month for that to actually ingrain into your brain to where you're almost automatic. And it was like, because I've been trying to get my gym space together. Obviously, I'm trying to get back to work, things like that. But what I realized was some of the things that I took for granted when everything was good and everything was plugged in was I leaned on and relied on my habits. And like I said, we talked about this a little bit in the breakout room. The smallest habit is getting up at the same time every day and things of that nature. So I was like, oh my God, my habits I've got to recreate those habits. I've got to get that muscle memory going on. So believe it or not, I walked away yesterday like, oh my God, I got it. I think I got it. So it's like plugging in. It's like a software upgrade. I got a little software upgrade yesterday, and it really brought a smile to my face. And I think I'm going to be able to move forward after seeing that.
And that kind of brings us to, I think, this stage of this too, when we think about it. So now you've kind of went through, I think, what I'm going to call the first two parts of this, the aspiration and your motivation and your spark piece of it. So now you're at the commitment piece, because as you just stated, Chris, for example, you need to now continually do these routines until they become just muscle memory, right? From a habit standpoint. So, but that's the commitment piece of it, right? How committed am I to, because it's that whole New Year's resolution thing. And that's kind of a point of this time of year. Everybody says, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, blah, blah, blah. It's January 13th or whatever it is. And 60% of people have already fallen off of whatever bandwagon they jumped on, and you're not even 2 weeks into the year yet. So that's the commitment piece. And I think that's a critical component when you think about making it from a potential standpoint, working your way through the process is your level of commitment. So Vince, I want to come to you because I have a very specific question around commitment and talking about those pieces of it. The thing for me with commitment is, do you feel that it is a self-driven thing, or is it more of a world, society, being held accountable? What do you think is the greatest motivator that actually has people be and stay committed to whatever they speak into the universe?
So I've got a short story, and one of the tools that I picked up more recently through this leadership development program called PSI was just around this whole concept around this. And they asked the question, you've got intention, and then you've got execution. And they asked, if you had 100%, how would you break down the most important components of intention vis-a-vis execution of follow through? And it was just interesting because I'm like, well, if you don't have the intent, And how do you actually have the wherewithal to follow through? But then if you don't have the follow through, how do you actually change anything? So I was balancing between, I don't know, 90-10 and then 50-50, and then, and then anyways, the end of the story is it's 100% intention. At least that's how they presented it. And I was like, okay. And then they explained it out there. And where if your intention is not there, nothing else matters, because you won't have the follow through. And if anything less than 100% intention means, you're not fully committed. You're not fully moving forward. It's and then I think about, our own internal dialogue. I think about the protest behavior that we all have, and those are the feelings of not good enough, or not not enough, and whatever, or feeling like you don't deserve this, the self-sabotage piece, which is, as we all know, that's the toughest one, because that's stuff that was essentially ingrained to us as a child. And this is where, as a parent, it's so important to talk to your kids about, they are good enough and they can achieve this and they will. And, that goes back to that mindset piece, and, teaching these fundamental beliefs around that is so important. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges when we think about, folks, the haves and the have not. It's what you ingrain in your kids. It's how you talk to each other. It's the belief that you can achieve that, you will achieve that, versus like, oh no, you'll never account for anything. And that's our own internal multi-generational trauma that continues to repeat itself.
As we look at that, the accountability, and that's another word we throw around a lot. Self-accountability in this case is I think tied to intention, as you said, right? But again, all of what we're talking about with the ASCENT principles is helping you to identify, especially the early phases of the framework, what is your intention, so that you have the clarity and know what that truly is. That's what you've got to get, I think, put away first and foremost, is what the intent is and where you're trying to move to. Once you've done that, then you can transition over to putting together a plan to accomplish it. So, and that's the thing I think people jump into, is they jump into the planning stage first and don't take the time to understand what the plan really needs to be focused to, which is the intention, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the piece of it that I see. So Chris, I want to ask you that question. Obviously, you've identified you need to set these habits and these different things from a getting it done. So now you were at the, as Vince said, the execution piece of it. What is your plan? How do you plan to go about making sure that these things happen, that you establish these new habits? What are your thoughts, and where are you with that in the process?
Well, I think part of that is the planning. The thing I heard from the last couple of things you guys have said, we're talking about the commitment. Sometimes commitment means there's financial commitment. There's just commitment to, overall commitment to self. This week has been interesting. I've literally parked in front of my computer for a couple of days where I didn't leave the house. One of the things I did was, because I'm really, like I said, I'm trying to find my way back into my professional circle, while also dealing with some of my, other needs, my physical health needs. I'm always been if you know me, I've been a gym guy. It's been one of my things that I've fallen back on over the years. And it's actually, it's a habit that has served me well over the last couple of decades. So I'm finding my way back into that space. I'm going to flip flop a little bit here. So one of my commitments I made this week was, obviously I have aspirations, desires to find some employment and put myself back into the tech space, more or less. So what I did was, one of the learning platforms There's been some classes and some modules that I wanted to take that will help to get me back into the space that I desire to be in. I actually bought some classes. There was some sales on some classes this week and some modules, and I put my money where my mouth is, and I bought those classes. So basically, essentially, I'm putting myself in the hot seat, because if you know me, like I think you guys know me, I hate wasting my money. So that was an actual first steps for me, is to get these, to set these profiles up. And obviously, I've been working on my resume, and that's been a continual process, but just really putting the time in, really saying, hey, you just need to put the time in. I know there's more other things I'd rather be doing, but this is necessary right now. This is a necessary step in the process. If I'm going to get where I need to go, or where I more importantly, where I desire to go, then I've got to start putting some time into it, making the, time, first and foremost, the time commitments. So that's really what this week has been about. And we talked in our last podcast, we were talking about this, what was it? The 7 habits of unsuccessful people. Mm-hmm. And I thought my big one was procrastination. Well, it really wasn't. What I think I've come to discover this week it wasn't procrastination. It was a lack of habits. It's really what this is about. So once I can kind of get on the habit train, start to get some time in, to redevelop that muscle memory, I think everything else will start to unlock and the pieces will start to come together. But it's back to this commitment. I just need to make the commitment. And this week was a week where I think I made some headway. And now we've got to take it into the following week, make some more headway, and just keep kind of raising the bar incrementally. And it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have to be large increments. Because as I say, I've coined the phrase, progress isn't measured in distance, it's measured in progress. So that's kind of where I'm at. And that, everybody has to find what works for them. This is what appears is starting to work for me. And I'm happy about it. I'm excited about it.
So let me ask this question. Is that a mental plan or is that a documented plan? I mean, have you written this out and then, what this week's going to look like, what next week's going to look like, what next month, your intent, as Vince said, your intention for what next month needs to look like? Or how are you managing that piece of it?
Well, the starting point for me is the fact that I found this little gem, this little nugget in me that appears to because what they say, people say all the time, make it make sense. It's starting to make sense. And I think that was part of my problem before. Nothing really made sense. I was just aimlessly flailing. I knew that there was something out there for me. I knew that there was a direction that I was looking for. And I think I'm maybe on to something. So now the next step is to start to do a little more journaling. I mean, I've got all these notepads and, different vehicles to journal. I think I need to start actively journaling. That was one of the things that were on my list, to start to journal. The positive, and coupling that with, positive affirmations. Obviously, you know me, you guys know me, so I'm always seeking support. That's pretty much built into my process. That's actually what's kept me afloat, is having no understanding and knowing that if I seek support, that quite typically I'm going to receive it back, especially with the people that I have around me. So it's a work in progress. If you're asking me for the quick answer is it's a work in progress. I've got a lot of work. So right now it's mental, but we're going to work it into an actual plan as we go over the next few days or next few weeks.
So I would like to hear something, both as a friend and also a podcast mate too, is, when you think about your progress is measured in progress, and you think about all the things you should be doing to better prepare you. I often find, or I often question, you know, when you're always thinking about how you could be doing these things, you're always thinking about like, well, I'm not ready yet, or I'm not there yet, or whatever. And I believe you're ready. I believe you're there. And maybe what I'm getting to is, you know, wondering when you believe you're ready, or when you believe you're there, or when you believe, you know, you can achieve this. Because going back to our first beginning opening part of it is, you know, and so I guess coming back to it is, it'd be great to hear you say some metrics, some data points, and this is the you know, there's so many different references on this one, but when you start a business as an entrepreneur and you're testing out your hypothesis, you're testing out your assumptions to see if this is something that people will buy or use. You're trying to get feedback. It's discovery. And part of this is that unless you test this with other people, it's a great idea in your head. So it'd be great to hear from you, you know, I applied for these jobs, or I went and talked to these things. And it'd be great if that would be like, you know, this week it's 1, it's 3, it's 5, it's 10, it's 20, it's whatever. Because, you know, if it forever will be something where you're always working on yourself, or always taking classes and putting your money where your mouth is, I don't know. I'm waiting to hear that this is coming together for you, because otherwise there's this level of hesitation where you've been on the bench, where you've been doing this. And then the question is, you know, it's going to be tough. Yeah, you're going to get, you know, negatives on this journey. I would like to hear more of actual metrics or data that you could use to help you get through this.
Yeah. And Chris, hold on before you respond, because I want to add on before you come to that. So Vince, thanks for sharing that. And your mindset and my thought were exactly the same. And I'm going to say it this way, Chris. There's activity, and then there's activity. And that might seem like an oxymoron, but the activity that Vince is referring to, which will move you forward, and my chair, I get 1 vote, in my opinion, is the activity of actually doing the thing versus planning to do the thing. Now, hold on. Not to say you should not continue to plan to do the thing, because that's going to make you better at doing the thing. But you, somewhere in there, you've got to find this divide of this much of my time I'm going to do the thing, and then this much of my time I'm going to be planning and getting better at doing the thing. Because what you learn, and what Vince is saying is, doing the thing is where the knowledge, the feedback that, oh, I should do it this way, because that's where you get the real world input and examples for it. So as I said, there's activity and then there's activity, but you need a balance of both sides of that fence. And
my response to both of you, both of my friends, is you're both 100% right. 100%. I have no rebuttal, no real defense. I'm not going to defend myself. I'm not going to defend my position. You're 100% right. And here's the beauty of this. Me putting out what I said, I'm looking for input. So I'm always, you know, even though I think most people are being honest when you seek input from folks on situations. There's a part of you that is scared of what the response is going to be, because you're probably going to hear something that just freaks you out. And in my case, when you guys said, "Oh, I got an answer," I was like, "Oh, here we go." But the reality is that's what I'm looking for, if I'm being honest. And I am, you know, you guys know me well. I think I've reached the point now where I'm almost at the cliff. I'm planning that, you know, the cliff is coming. So I've been slow walking. So I'll admit that I've been slow walking to the cliff, because there has been no sense of urgency. There's now starting to become a sense of urgency. A lot of it's internal. You know, it's not, and I got something there's a couple of things behind me that are helping to create that. But it's not the real reason why I'm doing it because it's what I want to do. And that's the understanding part that a lot of people you can muddle through life sometimes, not understanding what you want to do, what you desire to do. Well, this is part of a reformulation of habits. It's really what it is. I don't want to make it complicated. It's because for me it's becoming simple. It is starting to, and this tells me my brain is starting to work.
Well, okay, so let's dive into this thing.
Okay.
When you set your intention to be doing something differently and getting back into the swing of things, when is this a calendar thing? Where you said, okay, by I don't know, March, by February, by June, by next January, when do you want to be doing whatever it is you are doing differently professionally?
Oh, I'd love to be doing it by next month.
Okay, so February.
Yeah.
What do you believe you need to do to achieve that?
Well, I think the simple answer is just continue what I'm doing, but ramping it up. Like I said, I'm at a stage now where mentally I think I'm almost there. Now I need to translate it to paper and really working on an actual plan. And I'm formulating that plan. So here's the thing. Part of it is confidence. I've mentioned this in the past. We've talked about my confidence levels. I feel like I'm a beast when my confidence is on point. I just feel like I'm unstoppable when my confidence gets up there. I've been rebuilding my confidence. I mean, it's something simple as us being out on the golf course. That creates confidence for me. And it touches every part of my life. I play golf because I love playing golf, but it also is a confidence builder for me. And each good shot I make helps me to move forward. I've always had sports as a part of my life. I use sports analogies. I'm not Tiger Woods, never will be a Tiger Woods, but there are certain things that I do in my life that tells me that I can have and find success in some of the things that I love. And like I said, we're starting to, I'll use that as part of that foundation for me. We're starting to play golf again a little bit more. And I'm starting to get confidence out of it. I mean, barring the little setback I had last weekend with my shoulder, I still have found success, even being injured.
Okay.
So I stayed in that moment.
So let me clarify something. What I'm hearing you say is that what you are hoping to achieve next month or in the very immediate future is something where you are jumping back in as an entrepreneur, or are you jumping back in as working for someone else's vision company, etc.?
The short-term answer is probably working for someone.
Okay.
And then hopefully finding that entrepreneurial space again.
Okay.
But right now, I think what's going to serve me best is to get in and be a part of something and allow myself to grow and fill my tank, so to speak.
Okay. So
that's a big step.
And is this vision or intention an organization that is small in numbers of employees, as medium in number of employees, as large? What does that vision look like?
Honestly, I'm open.
Right, but there's a sweet spot. Everyone likes a sweet spot.
There's always a sweet spot.
So what is that sweet spot?
Probably a medium-sized company.
Which is like what?
I don't know. Could be anywhere from 10 to 50 people.
Okay. And is this something where you feel like you're going to be doing day to day? Like you're going to be going into an office? Is this something you do remote? You can do field work?
I would love to do like maybe a hybrid situation where, you're going to see me X amount of days, but there's X amount of days where you're not going to be able to put your hands on me per se. Long as I'm a part of it and plugged in and growing. We've talked about this before. We talked about I'm looking for fit. At the end of the day, obviously monetary compensation is key, as one of the components, but it's really about the fit. Because I mean, you could get plugged into a situation where the money is supposed to be just great, but it's not a fit, and consequently, you're not going to be able to grow. I'm looking for growth, so there's, it's a few things I'm looking for out of this process, and I believe it's achievable. And like I said, this is the thing I've been doing. Obviously, we talked about the planning stages and the research stages, and I've been starting to I've been being more diligent about it. That's the other thing. This is back to me leaning into the habit forming or reforming is seeing the data, looking at the data, becoming comfortable with the data. That's something that I have not done on a consistent day in and day out basis, and I've been working on that. Go ahead.
So when you're looking at this data and you're looking at the potential opportunities out there, do you believe that the majority of opportunities that align with what you have just expressed to us are ones which will fall into your lap as through relationships, or they're going to be opportunities that you will apply for like a traditional job application hiring?
My mind tells me both.
Okay.
We live in a relationship state.
Sure. So how are you spending time identifying where what you're putting in forth time-wise in investing yourself aligns with the potential opportunities that are currently out there?
Honestly, Vin, I'm still in the research, some of the research and planning stage. So some of that is becoming, I'm getting accustomed to. I spent this week just trying to get accustomed to viewing the data and how that coincides with what my raw thoughts are. It's an educational process. What I'm also doing is it's the issuance of grace. So I'm trying not to over pressurize myself, because that's where I get in trouble when I overemphasize. All of a sudden, instead of needing 2 bricks on my shoulders, I add 4. If that makes sense. So I'm warming up to it. What they say, jump shooters, if your jump shot's not working, you go to the basket. So trying to take makeable shots right now. Then I can work on my long ball game again.
So I have a couple of things I want to throw out, and then we will move to the next thing. But so from taking next steps, Chris, one of the things that I see and then that I've heard here is, and you mentioned earlier about getting the feedback from us and all of that, and you appreciate that and you expect that, and that's good, because that's what we should do in a circle like this. But this brings us back to that definition of certainty versus uncertainty. So getting it from us, you are in a certain mindset of, I'm going to get feedback from them and it will be valued, but it's a safe space and yada, yada, yada. So I think some of the things you need to start to push yourself to do is to get out there and start to get some of that uncertain feedback. Other places, other people where you don't know either them as well, or how that feedback is going to come back to you, because that will also give you data, because you were just talking about data and learning. I think is very important. So starting to move from that certainty to getting more comfortable being in that uncertain state is going to be one piece. The other thing you mentioned was growth. And I definitely want to go back to this, because you were saying in the place that you go, one of the things you wanted was growth. And I want to drill down one more level on that. And this is part of the whole ASCENT thing, is I always want to go backwards before we go forwards. Growth can mean a lot of things, but I really just want for you to have clarity on one of 2 pieces of that word. When you say growth, are you talking about getting to a position where you have personal growth or career growth, or is it a combination thereof? Because that's also going to matter which way you look at that.
Well, I think the way I'm my typical thought process is both. I'm trying to feed both of those buckets, because my belief is they walk hand in hand. One will feed the other. and vice versa. So I strongly believe that. I mean, I think there's so much, it's so intertwined. I honestly don't think you can have one without the other.
Okay.
Honestly.
So then the last thing I'll say then is this: find a situation that you're actually more uncertain with than certain, because the uncertainty is where you grow.
Well, I be honest with you, Brian, I already know that. I mean, that's one area that I've already made peace with it. It's going to get uncomfortable before it gets comfortable again. I guarantee you that. That touches my mind on a daily basis. And I'm starting to get with that, that's the whole thing. If you go through those processes, I don't avoid it. I don't run from it. Actually, I'm running to it.
So really, we've worked our way around the framework. We are kind of in the navigation space now. So we've talked about evolution. Evolution is the plan, needing to have a solid, documented, well-intentioned, as Vince talked about, plan about what it is we're trying to do, where we're trying to get to, and understand what our potentials are to accomplish that. Navigation is about these landmines that get thrown in front of you, whether it's lack of confidence, lack of belief, peer pressure, what the spouse says, what your friends say, what your social circle says, what the work environment itself is like. And just, I mean, there's so many things, and you just have to develop the skills to be able to assess, change direction, be adaptive, and work your way through from a navigation standpoint. So that's kind of really where we are right now in our discussion when we talk about working your way through the framework, which obviously then brings us to the last piece, which is the transcendence piece. And I want to kind of get into that a little bit, talk about transcendence and why that's the most important part.
Well, I'm going to take a short, small kind of like step back as you move from the navigation to the transcendence, because I believe that, so much of that we're trying to look, we're trying to feel, we're trying to find if we're on the right path.
Correct.
How do you know you're moving in this? How do you know you're moving towards transcendence? And far too often, as we talked about earlier, there's the internal conflict. There's the external conflict with your, circles, and then there's like the overall like universe conflict. And so for me, first and foremost, you've got to work on yourself, right? We've always heard, that the answer is within you, and it's that realization that you are no longer a victim. You have the opportunity to play this game, and you have the role to control the game. You don't have to, if you don't want to do this, you don't have to. You can literally pull the parachute and pick another game, go a different route. And so what that means to me is who you surround yourself with is probably one of the most important things, because that is the culture or cultures to which you are a part of. And so we play translators and members of many different cultures, both in the family circle, in the love circle, and the friend circle, and all these different groups. And to me, part of the moving forward and acknowledging that you are growing and transcending as an individual is to realize, well, what works best for me, my values, and who, and are those groups, those cultures, supporting, encouraging, building. And if they're not, then it's recognizing that they are not, and then say, okay, is this a culture that I want to still be a part of? Is this a culture that is feeding me? And it might be one of those things where it's like, no, it's not today, but you know what? Maybe later on, maybe when I go off and I work on myself and I come back stronger, because I believe far too often, we get stuck into this loop. And the easiest way to see it, especially, is with our loved ones, right? Our partners, our people that we care for, and we're stuck in that a loop of attachment theory. And yeah, it's one of those things where when you can recognize that you're in this loop, when you can recognize you're in this victim mentality, and then you say, okay, it's not changing or fixing it. It's just saying, I'm in this, and it's something that I would like to, I'm changing. And then that's where you can really see. And for me, the navigation to transcendence is the ability for me to talk about these things, the ability for me to meet other people and talk about these things, the ability for me to align my logical reasoning brain with my subconscious brain, and then to the source. And how that's all reflective is flow state. To me, I know I'm on the right path when I'm having more and more conversations around in a flow state matter, because it just feels good. It feels like I'm really connecting in. It feels like I'm really working on things and thinking about things. There's a lot more ahas. And it's not just for me, it's for everything. It's with other people. It's with other past experiences. It's with future experiences. It's with, yeah. So that's where I believe.
So I hear two things in that, Vince. Awareness, self-awareness, I guess is a way to say it. And then acceptance of, or I guess not say acceptance, but being present. So not staying too far in the past, not getting too far in the future, but being present in all things that you're accomplishing in your life, and then in that moment in time, and engaging with those things. Is that what you're saying, or is it even deeper than that?
Yeah, no, it's okay. So I can simplify this, and I've said this before together, is, me going to Burning Man in this last year was, we call it, especially when you talk about the hero's journey, right? Joseph Campbell, there's this like death, and it's through that death of the journey. Everyone has a journey, and we probably have many deaths. But it's that transformation, because when they use the term death, you're doing things very differently from how you've done it in the past. And a lot of people think of death in a negative experience, but when you hear it through the lens of historians like Joseph Campbell, who's referencing stories, mythology, death is just a transformation. Death is just a different way of looking at things. Death is not bad. It's just, and that's where, one of the comments about death is that in most cultures, indigenous cultures, native cultures, they don't view it like that, because the spirit or the essence or the source will always be there. It's not like it goes away. It just changes. And so, my experience of Burning Man was an ego death. But flip side of this, which is where this is all going in my own transformation, is it's the same intent, but it's changing the way we look at it and the way I phrase things. It's the words I use. It's the mindset I have. It's a positive one, where again, presence is first and foremost key, but then gratitude's even more. So I'm saying the words in a positive way. I'm being more respectful and kind to myself, of course, first and foremost. Because if you're not kind to yourself, you can't be kind to others. And the presence thing is just prioritizing what you find value in. It's little things. Going back to Chris's habits, it's putting the phone down and being off technology when I'm around loved ones like my kids. It's really being present. It's engaging with them in a way where, far too often we find ourselves stuck into this, we call it rat race or other things like that, where it's so much going on, and simplifying things. It's being present for, one of my goals is to do more nature bathing. So, it's kind of fun for me on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day to do so much hiking. And since then, I've consistently gone hiking, whether it's with myself or other friends too, which is really great. Just getting out there.
That's the key component of it too. When we talk about getting to that transformative place, right? because transforming means that you have evolved in some way to be different than you were, right? And so you have had this transformative thing happen. And as you said, from your Burning Man experience, it was ego death, right? Where you kind of removed that from your program to a degree. And I think that's a valuable piece to look at. So what I want to do at this point is kind of go with final thoughts to share with the audience what our takeaways have been for today, and anything that we would like to also share with them for them to move forward with and move forward on. So Chris, I'm going to come to you first, and I'll come to you next, Vince. But Chris, from a final thought standpoint, what would you like to share? What was it from today that you kind of went, that makes more sense, or you've got more clarity, and you think it can also help other people move forward?
I'm going to lean in on just my own, obviously my own experiences. And I'm going to use a short period. I'm going to use this last week as a kind of a example of what I experienced, because at the end of the day, it's what I experienced. This last weekend and this week was kind of a test of sorts. I know I mentioned earlier that I had an injury from our golf game last Saturday. And I initially, when I hurt my shoulder, I went into kind of a medium-sized panic. And I said, this is not what I need right now. I don't need to get hurt. I just don't need it to start my year out. Part of my brain was saying I needed to be perfect. But once I kind of set back into the reality of the situation, I discovered it doesn't need to be perfect for me to keep moving forward. You know what I mean? I think that's a human flaw, is that we want things to be perfect before we can move forward in our lives. And the reality is it's never going to be perfect. And you need to make as in life, I have a hashtag I use when I post our golf thing. Golf is fun. Golf is life. So the ups and downs of the whole situation, the ups and downs of your life, I had to do a quick pivot. And it was, of course, we played on Saturday. I made it through that day. Sunday, I was kind of licking my wounds, kind of trying to figure it out. By Monday, I said I had started to recondition my brain, which is you still have things that you need to get accomplished, and you cannot use this injury as a reason to not get the things that you, at least to get some of the things accomplished that you have earmarked for this week. So for me, the challenge was to do a quick enough pivot, an adjustment, and to keep the train moving. And I was successful at that. So that helped to build my, to help to continue the build of my confidence to going in the direction that I need to go for my aspirations. So
Excellent.
like I said, I found success. And at the end of the day, success is success. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to build on it.
Yep. 100%. Yeah, that's a great point about no perfect time, right? Just keep pressing forward, right?
I like how Chris is, it's progress is progress, success is success. It's fun to talk about these things because, as much as, we, again, it goes back to one of the first points I made in the beginning of this session. I really wish, I really hope that the future everyone, has this level of openness and communication around just life. It's like I feel like it's always one of those things where what would you have done differently to do things to really establish fundamental beliefs and better prepare oneself for the future. And it's funny, I sent my kids this this little thing where again, most of it's just stuff that we talk about. Then I'm also like, you know what? The more I openly talk about these things, the more I want them to believe, because, it's not how I grew up. It's not how I wanted to grow up. And in my own search to improve or hope that their lives are better, because I'm 40, I just turned 45. So, I've already achieved or this level of whatnot, where it's now, how do I support their futures and others? It's less about me and more about them. And it's interesting. I'm going to read this to you. So it's a little meme that was posted on social media. It's called "Breaking the Generational Curse." So I sent it to them because I'm like, you guys need to understand what is toxic, this, whatnot. And so it says, quit yelling at your kids before they go to bed and expect them to sleep well. Quit yelling at your kids in the morning right after they wake up before school and expect them to have a good day. You set the tone for your children. You set the tone for your voice that they will always remember in their heads. You become their inner voice. Don't be their inner critic. Speak life, speak love, speak bravery and kindness and hope. Speak wisdom and truth, but most of all, listen to your children. And so I read that, and I was like, that's so interesting, because I feel like, so much of what we do, especially as it pertains to our kids and whatnot, it's an inner reflection of our own fears, our own insecurities, and really it comes down to control. When we think about, even though we might see someone doing amazing things or whatnot, it's the control function of us and our own security and our own value and our own self-worth, which limits us from allowing them to grow. It's a lot.
It is a lot, but also I think very valuable, because as you said, one of the episodes we did in the past, Vin, we talked about cultures, but then we also talked about there's, that's the thing that gets tossed around in business, and the country has a culture or whatever, but there's a family culture, and we talked about that in our session. And so I think that's a big piece of what you just shared, is talking about is how you are starting to establish a certain level of communication and care within the family unit that becomes a culture. And if you start it and then pass it on to your sons, etc., hopefully it'll carry on and become more of a traditional piece of the family. So I think that's a huge, huge piece of it. No question. My final thoughts for today really just reflect on talking about ways just to make it stick. And that's the whole point of the ASCENT process, because there are so many times where I think we want to evolve, we want to improve, we want to move in a different direction. And not to say that we might not even take the steps to start to do those different things, but we don't have a solid enough plan. We also may not have the right navigational tools, or have thought through all of those pieces and parts of it, so that when we do hit those challenges and those roadblocks, we, toss our hands up and give up. So we make some progress and then we slip back. We make some progress and we slip back. So the main thing is to really, as we said, start with where it is you're trying to get a grasp and understanding on that, the historical pieces of you and your life, and why you are where you are is where I put that. And then build from there to try to work your way around the framework, so that when you get to the end and you're at that point of being able to talk about transcending, that when you do transcend to that new space, that it sticks and you stay, and then build on to the next level of transcendence, whatever that might look like for you. And it's going to be a different path for all of us, but I think that's the most important piece. The last thing I want to share is that you can go through the ASCENT framework for free. It can be found at ascentmasterclass.com, and go there. You can download it and you can actually go through all of the questions. It's broken out into 6 different modules. One module for aspiration, spark, commitment, evolution, navigation, and transcendence. And again, you can download that for free and work at it at your own pace. So that's available to anyone who wants to take advantage of starting their journey towards breaking free, as we talked about at the beginning of this, starting to evolve and elevate yourself. Anything else, gentlemen, before we wrap up for the day?
I had a final thought.
Absolutely. Share it.
Life is just a series of dress rehearsals. That's all it is. It's just a series of dress rehearsals. You have to try to remember what you did well, what you didn't do that was what you did that was not so well, and continually work on trying to make it better as you move forward through life.
Chris, thanks for sharing that. Gentlemen, this has been great. Thank you. And for our audience out there, thank you for watching. Stay until the end. Until next time, we will definitely see you. Take care and take care of each other. It's very important. Bye now.